special greetings to our branch in Eswatini. It's been a great start to the morning, starting from yesterday. We've been so empowered, from Apostle Biggie Gamet. I hope you have enough memory card in your brains. I hope you have capacity to take it all in. Also, let me acknowledge our host, Apostle Temba Manana. Please let's clap for him. Thank you very much. Also, let me acknowledge the men's ministry leadership who have put it all together, the organizing team from Braamfontein, Centurion, as well as Eswatini. I also want to acknowledge our guests today, the pastors in the house. Let's give them a warm round of applause. Bring it all together. I know from the morning session as well as from last night opening service, the word and the worship and word, you have so many questions. I also hope that our speakers stick around so that for whatever questions that you have, we may address all those. So don't worry. And those who are at home, if at all you can somehow post them. I'm not sure with the media team if they have any questions, if they can be posted somehow, because from here we're going to be taking this to the exclusive session whereby to be part of the discussions on GBV, it will be on Zoom session, so you'll have to connect in to be part of it. Amen. Amen. Give yourself a one clap and one stomp and say, whoo! 1, 2, 3. Okay, go with me. Go with me. Go with me. I know you are excited. When I count to 3, you clap once, you stomp once, and you go, whoo! 1, 2, 3. Whoo! All right. Now, as I said, we're gonna have a teaching on GBV. This teaching is done or is presented or carried out by our sister in the house, and a friend to us, a great friend to us, Mrs. Lynn Ndlangamandla. So this was recently done now for our women's conference that was themed, He Says I Am, or he says I am, right? So we're going to be running that. Please take note as much because this is going to be a teaching and introduction to the subject of GBV. Like I said, when it is done, we're going to break into lunch. And then when we come back, we're going to engage on what is here and so many discussions that we want to have around the subject. Are we good? Are we good? Are we ready, media? All right, that's the next voice you're going to hear. Take it away.
There's so many things that are said about South Africa. You don't have to go far, just across the border. Go to Swaziland, go to Mozambique. Never mind if you go outside of the continent. The things that are said are always so amazing. The amazing things the country has achieved, fighting for human rights, fighting against the disillusion of people's rights. They talk about the World Cup 2020. 10 years later, people will speak about Waka Waka, and it's always a joke. They talk about Table Mountain. Of course, they never forget Nelson Mandela, Miriam Makeba, the amazing things Thuli Madonsela did for the country. It goes on and on and on. We are known as a rainbow nation. Unfortunately, one of the things that we're starting to be known for as well is the high levels of gender-based violence that's happening across the country. Gender-based violence is an umbrella term for any harmful act that is perpetrated against a person's will and is based on socially ascribed gender differences between males and females. Sounds like a lot of words. It's not really. What it means is that it's anything, any form of abuse against someone's will that happens as a result of that person's gender. That's all that it means. So that definition is obviously so wide, and I'm sure many of you have heard about different types of abuse that happens to people. There's a couple of types of ways in which it manifests. So you get domestic violence, you have physical violence, you have emotional violence, you have economic violence, you have sexual violence, and you have femicide. All of these are different ways in which people face and experience abuse. So an example of domestic violence is, of course, violence that happens within the home space, and it mostly happens between partners, right? You might have also heard it called intimate partner violence, and that is when it happens between two people who are in a relationship, and it happens mostly in the home. But of course, we realize that violence doesn't just happen in the home. These definitions also have the roots of coming from previously where it was assumed that this kind of violence only happens in the home, but of course it happens everywhere. We then have physical violence, which is any physical act that happens on your body. So it's hitting, it's pushing, it's pinching, it's punching, it's kicking, all of those physical acts of violence. We then have emotional violence. Now, this is the one that I think a lot of people can associate with and one that isn't commonly spoken about. Emotional violence, and I'm going to read the definition before I give examples. It includes verbal abuse, name-calling, belittling of another person. It also includes embarrassment, humiliation, and disrespect. These are the acts that affect your self-esteem and your confidence. So this is when, for instance, if, I don't know, let's use a partner example. Your partner always calls you stupid. He always calls you fat, always puts you down, always says things like, yeah, without me, you're nothing, or I made you. I don't know how many times I've heard people say, well, he did all the stuff for me, and so, I'm now I have to. No, you don't. You don't actually have to take any of that. That's actually just nonsense. And I think it's important to state that it's unacceptable behavior, and that's why I say it's nonsense. It's unacceptable because each person has been made by God or has been created to be able to live out their own lives. We've been given free will, which means we have the right to choose what we want and what we don't want. And of course, when somebody finds themselves in a space of being in a relationship where there's any form of violence, it's not that easy, and we'll get to that in a little bit. The next kind, which I think is really an important one to talk about, especially when we're talking about women, especially when we're talking about young women, and of course we know LGTG, you're a church of lots of young women who are in school, young professionals. Economic violence includes the control of a partner's assets, access to money, and other economic resources. The male partner may be reluctant for his female partner to work or may manage and abuse her payment for work done. So what does this mean? This is the kind of relationships that we get into a lot of times because we want more money, we want to be able to do the things that we want to do. It may be because we need extra income. It could be we actually are in a relationship with this person, but they are controlling all the funds. And the reason why I think this is important to talk about, especially in a church setting, is because we speak a lot about church marriage, the responsibilities of a husband and of a wife, and sometimes these things get conflated. They get a bit confused, where we feel that it's okay for somebody to use money to control us because he's my husband and I'm being respectful. No. There's a big difference between negotiating how we decide to do our financial process in the house to somebody using that as an excuse to control me. You get a lot of times, and this is specifically in the church setting, where couples will decide the mother should stay home and take care of their kids. This is great if it's a choice you've decided to take on your own as a woman. Or if you decide with your partner, you sit down and you say, you know what, babe, your 100 million is enough for both of us. I actually am interested in staying home and doing what I want to do for the kids and for the family or whatever it is. And that's completely different to somebody saying, I am the head of the household, therefore, I have decided that you should stay home. And then next thing you know, you're not even able to go and buy yourself a t-shirt. Forget a t-shirt, toiletries. You've got to constantly be negotiating for toiletries. If you've got a child, that person then uses that to manipulate and to control you. And the difference is the element of control. One of the things about gender-based violence is that it operates on power. And by power, what I mean is it's that invisible kind of force that happens and is used to control the way we think, the way that we act. And if you're in a stable relationship, we have a shared balance of that. What I mean by that is I don't feel threatened by the decisions that you make, and you don't feel threatened by the decisions that I make. And we're able to exchange. Even if we argue, even if we shout at each other, there's still a sense of the fact that we're both on the same plane and we're both working towards something and we're all on the same page. But if you're talking about economic violence or any form of violence, it is something the person uses to manipulate you. It's something that they use to control you. And a lot of the times, emotional violence and economic violence end up turning to physical violence because people do not want to be told what to do. People do not want to be controlled. Even God does not control us. In fact, I believe the Bible says that manipulation is basically buloi. There's a verse, I'm sure somebody will find it and put it in the video. But it's the truth. Anytime you are trying to control somebody, manipulation, this is what demonic powers do. Demonic powers go inside of us to control us because they want to tell us what to do and how to live and basically use their own agenda for what they want to do. And so as people, we need to be very careful that we don't step into the line of doing that. And that's how you begin to tell if you're experiencing gender-based violence or if somebody you know is experiencing it. In my day job, I am a women's rights manager, and I work with women across the country and outside of the country. And so the reason why I'm belaboring the point on economic violence is because when I work specifically with a certain age range of women, even though this affects women across the board, we find more and more and more that women who are younger, who are single, who are maybe starting out in their jobs or in the industries that they start in are more vulnerable to this kind of violence because you're still trying to figure it out. You're still trying to figure out, what am I doing? You've moved to Joburg, or you finished your studies and now you've got to pay for your own life. Maybe you had a bursary, maybe your parents paid, and now you've got to pay for rent, you've got to pay for transport. The costs become so many, and this is not just in cities. It's the same in rural areas as well, where women feel like, okay, cool, I'm done with school, there should be a next level to my life. And how do I get there? And the money is never enough. Another way that economic violence also shows up is maybe in a work situation where you want a raise, you want your contract to be confirmed, you want an opportunity, and the person says, love to give it to you, there's only one way to get that. And we all know what that means, right? So these are just the different examples of economic violence. The next is sexual violence. This is the most common form. And it's the one that is the most pervasive in our country. And that is, it involves rape, sexual harassment, sexual exploitation, and trafficking for sexual purposes. And this is all things that have to do with your body being violated sexually. And the thing about sexual violence is that it is a devastating thing that happens. I think all violence is devastating. Let's make no mistake about it. It's all devastating. This one seems to combine both physical, emotional, as well as your sexuality and who you are in that way. And that's the one that we hear about the most. That's the one that, if you're reading the newspapers and you hear that there's a case of GBV, most likely it's associated with sexual violence. The last is femicide. This is characterized by the murder of a female partner by an intimate male partner and is considered to be the most extreme outcome of GBV. So this one is, when you have a partner who eventually kills you. I mean, the stories are so many. It is unfortunate, but it is true. The stories are so many where, we hear of a partner who they got into a fight, maybe she left, and then he went and he hunted her down and he killed her. Or he came home from work, was upset from whatever happened, and he killed his wife and 3 children, then killed himself, or didn't kill himself. The famous case, I think the most recent famous case, and I only say famous because these cases happen daily, but these are the ones that get to the news and the media that I think you will know. It's the case of Uyinene Mkhetana, who was, raped and murdered and hung from a tree by people who were paid by her boyfriend. That's the allegation. So yeah, that's what gender-based violence is. I think those are the definitions that I've given. So when Pastor T and Dr. Zama asked me to speak about GBV, I had so many questions going through my head. As I said, I do this a lot in my day job, and often I go around the country and everywhere else I'm asked to go to speak to women about what GBV is in light of advocacy and being able to say, this is what GBV is. This is how you don't have to accept it. These are the services that are available for women and for those who are in trouble. And this is how you advocate for that not to happen to your daughter, to your sister, to your mother, to any other person that you know. So it was really tough when I was preparing for this to think, what is the best conversation to have? Because I think everything I've said thus far, you can Google it. You can Google, what is GBV? You can Google, how does it manifest? You can Google, what are the causes of GBV? And I thought what was important for me to also talk to is what the church is or isn't being able to talk about in terms of GBV. I think that the church is one of the most influential spaces that we still have, the church and places of worship. And the reason I say this is because it influences how we think. It influences what we believe. It influences what we believe is right or wrong. It influences our standards. It influences how we relate with other people. And it's tied into something that I think we all come to church for, which is a relationship with God. And so how can the church best respond? When I talk about the church, I'm not talking about some wall or some building. I'm talking about you. I'm talking about the people that are sitting in front of me. I'm talking about the people that are watching. I'm talking about people who get up every day and say that they believe and follow the way of Christ. That's who I'm talking about. So then I was in 2 minds because a part of me was a little bit sad that I would be speaking about this without the other half of this conversation, who unfortunately in this country are responsible for the majority of the perpetration of violence, who are the men. The reason why it would be important in a church setting to talk about it in that way is because we know our churches are set up along the lines of patriarchy. Of course, we have amazing leaders. We have amazing, people who lead us in churches who are woke, who are aware, who are hearing from God, who know that even in the Bible, God says that there's no difference. Male and female, he made them, he created them, it says in Genesis. And so they live out the way in which the scriptures speak. And Pastor T is one of those people. That's why he's one of my good friends and somebody who, I look to as a pastor as well as Dr. Z. But oftentimes in the churches that we have probably grown up in churches in other spaces, we get the sense that the church is okay with the concept of gender inequality. Why is that important to touch? So gender inequality is actually the root of gender-based violence. It is the ideology that makes it okay or makes it acceptable that we would weight one gender over another. And in this particular case, it would be the weighting of the male gender over the female gender. Why is this important, you're wondering? Who cares? We're all the same. The reason that's important is because of the way that it's played out. If you value one gender over another, it means that one gender is not as important, shouldn't be fought for, shouldn't be speaking, shouldn't be seen. This means that it erodes it starts to create the idea that, you can disregard what women think, you can disregard what they are saying, and it then continues to build to you can disregard even her life. Maybe this sounds like an exaggeration, but I'll give you an example. Oftentimes in conversations, you hear the different ways in which people talk about women. They'll say, if she's very strong, they'll be like, oh, she's too much. she's overwhelming. If her husband is quiet, if she's married, they'll be like, the poor man, shem, shem, shem. She probably, mgibele nhloko, they say in Siswati. I don't know what the English term is, but basically she's probably overwhelming him with her power. It's seen as a negative trait. Another example would be the way in which we can talk about women who, for instance, if you think somebody isn't I don't know, I'm going to use a term that's maybe controversial in the church, you'll excuse me, Pastor T. But somebody who they'll be like, I know, this woman, she sleeps around a lot, she has sex, all of these things. And suddenly it's okay to treat her disrespectfully, to treat her in a way that makes her not human because she isn't fitting into that box. Why are all of these things so important? The reason these things are so important because these actions that we see as these gross manifestations of murder, of rape, of abusing someone so easily come from a belief that women are not as important, or they're important for some things and not all things. So let me make an example. I come from a country just outside of the borders called Swaziland. Traditionally, how sexual abuse or rape is treated in a traditional setting is this way. The families will, so they find out, would say, okay, brother B from the other family in the village or wherever raped sister A, right? The families find out, and the girl's family will then speak to the boy's family and speak about what has happened. This is the issue that has happened. And then the boy's family have to pay a cow. Once the cow is paid, that's it. It's over. The expectation is, Nobazana, the cow's been paid, move on, get over it. They've basically said they were sorry. What does that teach the guys, the boys, the fathers, the uncles, in the family of the girl, let alone the family of the boy, in the family of the girl? It teaches the guys that, 1, all you need is a cow, right? 2, she'll get over it. 3, she's the person who becomes, the one who the blame sits on. She becomes damaged goods. There's something wrong with her. Something happened to her that nobody's going to speak about. All of these attitudes, all of these ways of thinking are highly problematic because that seed is planted in your boy child, right? If you're the mother, your boy child. If you're the sister, and your brother. That subconsciously it's okay for me to be able to treat a woman in this way because even in my own family that was acceptable. Okay? My father, my uncles, the men and the women who are older basically were like, it's acceptable, this is how it's done. I must say that obviously I wasn't around in the 1800s or early 1900s or whatever, so I don't know traditionally how it was done. I don't know if they sat around and there was, a justice system and process. I can just speak to the experiences that I was a part of as a child growing up and what I saw and what I learned. These things become like these kind of secrets of things that happen to the bodies of women and girls that are not spoken. And it becomes absolutely unacceptable. It's an evil that's allowed to just grow because, women, anyway, they're problematic. Anyway, she probably did something to deserve it. I just want to read a couple of myths to you around gender-based violence because I think it's important for us to be clear about the fact that in South Africa, for instance, 1 in every 3 women will experience gender-based violence, yeah? 1 woman will die every 6 hours, I believe. And so if you haven't experienced it, you're probably just 1 in waiting. And that's a scary thing to think about. And as a man who's watching, it's a similar statistic. 1 in 3 men are perpetrators. So either you are perpetrating or you're watching somebody perpetrating or you know of somebody perpetrating. And we have language where we've excused this to say, inzaba yabantu lababili ayingenwa, a situation or an issue that is between 2 people, shouldn't be intervened in. And I'm just here to say that's nonsense. That's absolute crazy nonsense that we have to change. It's not acceptable for us to watch. It's not acceptable for us to be okay with the pain of other people, especially in the church. The church is not excused from gender-based violence, right? When they do the statistics, they don't say 1 in 3 women, except for the women in the church, will experience GBV. They don't say 1 in 3 perpetrators, except for those males who are in the church. That's not how it works. It's across the country, which means It involves and it includes all of us. And in order for us to make churches that are safe spaces, we have to actively be engaged in doing that. And, you know, I hope that if you guys have brothers or husbands or boyfriends or cousins who are male who are around, you bring them in to listen, because in as much as this is a women's conference, this is a conversation for all people of all genders, because in order for us to begin to address this issue, it's going to have to take all of us. It's going to have to take us consciously deciding to make a difference about how we treat each other, and most especially how women are treated. I know some of you are sitting and you're asking yourselves, well, women perpetrate violence as well. This is true, right? Your gender doesn't mean you are precluded from perpetrating violence. But the reason why we constantly speak about male perpetrators is because the statistics show that by and large, males are the most common perpetrators of violence against women, against children, and against other men. So that's why it's a tough conversation. It always makes men feel uncomfortable because they feel like, I'm not the one. I'm glad you're not the one. Make sure your brother isn't the one. Continue not being the one. Also, a lot of people want to say, oh, but you know, he's a good man. We should clap for him. I don't clap for that. I'll tell you why. Because by choosing to be somebody who shows love, who shows mercy, who upholds human rights, that should be your basic aspiration as a person. What I will clap for is if you want to even take it a step further and say, I will not allow this to happen with my brothers. I will not allow this to happen in my workplace. I will not allow it to happen where I'm at. Then I'll clap for you, because stepping outside of yourself is something that I think we all need to do and encourage each other to do. But if you're being a basic guy and you're not perpetrating violence, you're just being human. Do not clap for yourself. Don't let anybody clap for yourself. But once you step out, you can then call them to clap. So one myth is that gender-based violence only happens to poor and marginalized women. Guys, GBV happens to you as long as you are human, whether you have lots of money or whether you have no money, whether you are living in the rural areas, whether you're living in the urban areas, whether you are a CEO or whether you are somebody who is a waitress. It happens to all of us across the board. GBV is not common in industrialized countries. I just wanted to bring that in because people feel like, oh, maybe this is an African lie. No, GBV happens everywhere. It's happening in Europe. It's happening in the US, in northern US. It's happening in Africa. It's happening in Asia. It's happening everywhere. Everywhere where there is gender inequality, gender-based violence is happening. So another myth that I want to share with you guys Another myth that I want to share with you is victims of gender-based violence provoke the abuse through their inappropriate behavior. This is a big one. It's such a big one. Because a lot of people will first ask, what did she do? There's so many studies, and if you've got time, Google it. I know you guys are always on the socials, Google it, right? Women are raped in tight, skinny jeans with long sleeves. Women are raped in tracksuits. Women are raped in miniskirts. Women are raped in dresses. Women are raped in Islamic countries in full burqas that only show their eyes. Because rape is not about sex, it's about power, right? So this idea that if you're wearing whatever you're wearing, you are making somebody, it's craziness. If somebody doesn't know how to teach themselves to be able to see somebody and see them and not see what they're wearing, the problem is with them. It's not with you. And I know that this is an itchy one in church, right? I always got into trouble for that because I was like, when are we going to start teaching men that people can dress how they want to dress? And I particularly find it strange because all of the men who are with us in church watch TV, they drive past billboards, and there's always sexy, beautiful women in short bikinis and short skirts, and they drive by, they walk by. You know, they're not like suddenly thinking of attacking someone because they're wearing a bikini. So it's important that we take that same concept with us into church to say, we believe in the guys. We believe they know how to control themselves. We believe that they've chosen to be here, and we believe that they can be human. So the idea that somebody was raped or something happened to her because of what she was wearing is problematic because then the blame sits on somebody else, where the truth is that it doesn't matter what you're wearing. It honestly doesn't matter what you're wearing. It's all of these concepts around morality and policing the way that women dress and the way that women present themselves that goes back to the issue of gender inequality. You've never really heard somebody talk about what, that guy, ugqokeni. Unless, it's meant to be a black tie and he shows up in jeans. But on a regular day, even if he's wearing his shortest shorts, even if he's topless, there's never a conversation around, yo, did you see that guy? Oh my God, he was topless. Oh my God, why was he not wearing a t-shirt? Because we've normalized this idea that, men are able to do whatever they want to do. They can dress however they want to dress. And there's something wrong when women choose to do the same. So that's why it goes back to my first conversation around the importance of understanding what gender inequality does and how it actually is the root of a lot of very terrible things that happen to women. The next one, most women are abused by strangers, and that women are safe when they are home. What the lockdown has cemented, particularly in this country, right, and across the world, is that we always knew that was not true. But what it's cemented and helped, I think, other people who don't believe in this understand is that the majority of violence that happens against women is actually perpetrated by people we know. People we know, people who are our friends, people who are our brothers, people who are our cousins, our co-workers. It happens with people who might be dating because we knew them, right? And then there was a date rape that happened. It could be our boyfriend. It even happens in marriage. So the majority of GBV is actually perpetrated by people we know. It's very few cases. It happens, of course. Living in a city, for instance, we know that it's true. You could be walking down the street and it happens to you. But the vast majority of times it happens and it's perpetrated by people we know. And the second part was that women are safer at home. Home isn't safe for all of us, guys. And I think, there's something in that for me resonates as well with church. Church is meant to be a place like home. And then oftentimes it's the places that feel like home where abuse happens most strongly, because it's a place where we put our guard down. It's a place where we trust. It's a place where we believe that everybody in the room has our best interest at heart, that we all have the same goal. So if I'm at home and I'm a child and I've been taught that my parents are there to take care of me, if my father comes and does advances on me, I think maybe he loves me. It confuses me. And so the idea that if a woman is home, she's safe, if maybe you still held that in your mind, the lockdown has confirmed for us as a country specifically that we always knew it wasn't true, but it definitely isn't true. And it's our job to be able to create those safe spaces. So in closing, because I feel like I've spoken a lot, and I hope you guys have lots of questions. I'm happy if you have questions, you can send them. The church will make sure that they get to me. I'm happy to answer all questions around this because I think it's such an important topic. Because if indeed we want to live life in abundance, is it John 10:10 that says that Jesus came to give us life and give it to us in abundance? It means it's abundant freedom, it's abundant joy, it's abundant peace. It's the ability to walk around and know that you can be whoever you want to be and be free from every and all forms of violence. And that's something that I believe in very, very passionately. I believe that the kind of violence that is perpetrated against women and other people who experience it is an evil that has actually just used to destroy us, to make sure that we never live and become who we are meant to become. And the structures and the institutions and the brothers clubs and the boys clubs are all part of the system that makes sure that this continues to happen. And that's why it's just got to stop. It makes no sense that more than 53% of our population, which are women, live a life of fear. It makes no sense. There is no other social ill that we find acceptable at that higher rate. So, in closing, where can you get help? There's so many resources where you can get help. I think what I'll do is that I'll also share with the team all these websites I'm about to rattle off so that at least you have them there with you. But there is Lifeline, there's the GBV hotline, there is the police, there are NGOs that work specifically supporting women. If you need help getting out of a violent situation, if you're maybe in a household situation and you don't know how to get out and how to leave, there are organizations that help women to leave. One is called Rise Up Against Gender-Based Violence. There is POA, which works specifically with supporting women who've gone through gender-based violence, helping them to find a safe place, but also helping them through the court processes. There's the Women's Legal Center that specifically focuses on helping women bring cases against their perpetrators and then supporting them throughout the process. There's so many organizations and there's so many ways in which you can reach help. I know the leadership of this church is one that you can trust, and the different leaders that you know of, even from your cell group leaders, are people that you can trust to say, listen, this is what I'm going through, or this is what somebody close to me is going through, and they will make sure that you get help and somebody else gets help. I think one thing that I want to end with, because I don't want to leave the room, you know, this sort of virtual room, with the sense that it's a defeated issue. I think it's an important issue. I think it is an issue we can no longer ignore as the church and people who are in the church, mostly because it also affects us, but also because of the responsibility I think we have as a church more than any other institution as a place of worship, is that there's hope, right? There's hope. You can actually get free from gender-based violence. It doesn't matter where you sit in the cycle. It doesn't matter if it's something that's just happened to you, or if you've been in a relationship for a short time or a long time. It doesn't matter if you were raped when you were a child. It doesn't matter any form of abuse that you would have faced. There's hope. There's hope for you to get help. There's hope for you to receive support. All of these institutions that I've just named do just that. They walk beside women to make sure that you get support. And there's also a hope that you're able to live after that. There are so many stories of people who have survived some of the most horrific things. And through support from family and friends, through prayer, through a lot of therapy, counseling, which I think is very important, they've actually managed to get to the other side. So all is not lost. And to all the men who are watching, I know oftentimes when we speak about GBV, people always say, oh, you are bashing the men. I'm not bashing the men. I'm putting the responsibility at the feet of those who I think are the ones who are able to do something about it. This is also a chance to say there's hope as well. There's hope for you to choose to speak differently about the women around you, to think differently about how women are treated and stand up for the correct treatment of women, to stand against gender-based violence. If there's a rumor that one of your boys is beating up his girlfriends, he probably is. Go speak to that nigga, okay? Take him to the police station. And it's these acts of bravery and these acts of standing up that are going to start shifting the picture that we're seeing and are going to lead us to a space where your daughter, all right, your little sister, your wife, your mother, can walk to the shop at 10 o'clock at night and come home, and that isn't a dream. Thank you.
Awesome. How do you feel, gentlemen?
Great.
Yes. Yeah, man. Yeah. Good stuff, man. Wow. So there's so much we can build on from what was shared. And I know each and every one of us, we can relate one way or the other with what Sister Ivy has shared. I could relate some parts. As a man in church, I would relate to say, okay, what am I doing? What role am I playing as far as this? Am I aware of these violences? Yes. Am I aware as far as gender inequality is concerned? Yes, I am aware. But what am I doing? Okay? While I live in fear myself, but also I'm perceived and I'm seen as a perpetrator. Okay? So, we're going to build on this, gentlemen. I hope you come prepared. I hope those of you who are home, you're also able to share. If you cannot join us for the Zoom session that is coming, we plan to start around about 1:50. Please be ready. I know the Zoom details have been shared. So, we're looking forward because it's going to be an exclusive session where we're going to be engaging together. Like I said, we also plan to bring it all together as well as your questions as far as wealth creation as well as mental health is concerned. Are we good?
Yeah.
Are we good?
Yeah.
All right. I'm told that lunch is ready. So from here, so please, gentlemen, be mindful of time so that we can maximize the time that we have. As much as it looks like we have enough time, in actual fact, we don't have. And you realize as soon as we start engaging on the subject or this topic, you realize that we need more time because we want to swerve from one direction to another, trying to get somewhere. So I'm very excited. I'm looking forward. I hope you are as excited as I am. All right. So just the protocol as far as lunch is concerned, I'm going to ask that we're going to make a line. It is serving yourself. So if you can have the apostles, the pastors, the elders of the church go in front, go first, and then we follow. So as much as we queue, let's also ensure that the social distance is maintained all the time. We have enough, all of us will have, okay? The 2 fishes and the 5 loaves of bread, we have prayed or we want to pray for. Amen?
Amen.
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 Shall we pray for lunch? Yeah. Father, we thank you for this time. Thank you for this time.